All right, it being 6 p.m, I'll declare the April Ordinary Council meeting of the Shire of Capel open. We wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on, the Wadani people. We wish to acknowledge and respect their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and to their culture, and to elders past, present and their descendants who are with us today and those who will follow in their footsteps. Record of attendance, we have a leave of absence for Councillor Sciano, and Councillor Tarantroy is an apology due to COVID isolation requirements. Previous public questions taken on notice, there are none. Public question time, we have received none on notice. Are there any questions from the floor? No. Applications for leave of absence? There are none. Declarations of interest, we have received none. There are no items for discussion behind closed doors. We now move to item 8, the confirmation of the minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting of the 30th of March 2022. They have been circulated. Is there a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Andrew. Is there a seconder? Councillor Dillon. Councillor Andrew. No. I'll put them to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. There are no announcements by the presiding person without discussion. We have no petitions, deputations or presentations. There are no motions of which previous notice has been given, and there are no questions of which previous notice has been given. We now move to section 13 of tonight's agenda, the Chief Executive Officer reports. Item 13.1, quarterly reporting on the Shire of Capel Corporate Business Plan 2021 to 2025 for the third quarter. Okay. Is there a mover for that recommendation? Councillor McCleary. Is there a seconder? Councillor Noonan. Councillor McCleary.
Thanks, Mr. President. Yes, a very robust report. Looking forward to future ones on a quarterly basis. So I thank the CEO and the staff for that.
Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Councillor McCleary. I also endorse the recommendation. It's particularly a good report, and it's good to see the graphic in there. It sort of helps us to get an idea of how things are travelling, so that's good. Thank you.
Are there any speakers against the motion? Speakers for? Any discussion? Councillor McCleary. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. Okay, we now move into section 14, infrastructure and development reports. 14.1, the 10-year plant replacement program of 2022-23 to 2031-32. This item was deferred from the March ordinary meeting. List of speakers is there. So the only speakers left on the item are Councillor McCleary, Councillor Dillon, and yeah, myself. So, Councillor McCleary, did you have any? Councillor Dillon? Yes, sorry. Councillor Dillon, you've got the call.
Thank you, Mr. President. Really nothing to add. I'm happy with the motion as presented. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. Councillor Noonan. Question, is it? Or have you not? My apologies. Councillor Noonan.
The only point I'd like to make is to thank Jethro Sleer, the Manager of Operations, for the briefing that he gave us on Tuesday, yesterday. That helped to clarify a lot of the questions that councillors had and allay some of the concerns that had been raised in previous comments at the previous meeting. So I'm certainly comfortable with supporting this motion as is. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. All right, as the mover is unfortunately not present tonight, unless there is any discussion, in which case would need a suspension of standing orders, I'll put it to the vote. So I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. All right, item 14.2, the Programme of Works for Public Open Spaces 2022 to 2023. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor McCleary. Is there a seconder? Councillor Andrew. Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, very comprehensive report. It's got some significant dollars in it over the coming years, but the report fully covers the reasons for this, and in particular the regular turf renovation. If it's not carried out, it will cost us more and opens us to risks of people using the facility. So I fully endorse this motion.
Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. President. No, I'm always happy to expend funds that contribute to upgrading or maintaining of our sporting facilities and our public open spaces. I concur with Councillor McCleary. It's a very comprehensive report, and no, I'm very happy with it.
Are there any speakers against the item? Are there any speakers for or against? Councillor McCleary? Well, I'll put that one to the vote then. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. Okay, we now move to 14.3, the Programme of Works, Paths and Trails, 2022-2031. Again, this item was deferred from the March Ordinary Council meeting. And there is also an amendment to the original motion, which is currently active, moved by Councillor Noonan and seconded by Councillor Clues, and both have spoken to the amendment. So are there any? Councillor Noonan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, I would like to withdraw the amendment because once again we've had the opportunity to have briefings.
Yeah, sorry, yep. No, yep. All right, we'll withdraw the amendment. Yes, I do actually. Does the seconder agree? Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we move back to the original officer's recommendation. The mover was Councillor Clues, who had spoken. No, sorry, you hadn't exercised your right to speak. The seconder, Councillor Mogg, had exercised her right to speak. So are there any speakers for or against the recommendation? Councillor McCleary?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, look, this is quite a good program, and I could understand the reasons for the earlier discussions. And as Councillor Noonan pointed out, we've had some more input in our from the staff. Very good work by the staff to develop this up, and fully endorse the motion.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Clues, do you wish to close?
Thanks. I'll probably just point out, after some discussions we had earlier, that we've got a couple of items on the table tonight that it seems that we probably just needed a bit more information on and a bit more conversation about to be happy with them. So I think, as I'm sure everyone will soon see, we are making some adjustments to the timeframes and the way we operate with these things to try and alleviate that issue. So moving forward, hopefully this will be a lot smoother on meeting nights.
All right, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. Item 14.4, the extractive industry for Lot 1, Duquesne Road, North Boynup. There is a recommendation there starting on page 52, going across a few pages to page 54. Is there a mover for the officer's recommendation? Councillor McCleary. Is there a seconder? Councillor Dillon. Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. As with always, these extractive licences come to us. It's been a good development in the recent sessions of these that we've developed a really good environmental consideration for restitution of the area at the finish. This one in particular had an expired lease, as I understand it, and just by extending it, we've got what I would suggest is a better clout as far as the outcomes for the area that's going to be mined. Yeah, I fully endorse this recommendation.
Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I'd like to concur with my fellow councillor across the chambers. I think it would make sense. It's an existing area that's been worked on. I think if we renew this once again, like Councillor McCleary said, we'll be able to get a better outcome in terms of rehabilitation. I think that's something everybody throughout the Shire would like to see. So I endorse the motion as presented.
All right, are there any speakers against the motion? Speakers for? Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to raise the concern, and it's mentioned by the Capel LCDC, and it's also in the officer's report, that the rehabilitation that should have occurred, previously occurred, was not done very well. Only 4 species of trees were planted, and that there was the suggestion that it could be both returned to native vegetation and also used as pasture. Obviously, the overlapping of those two land uses is completely, well, it simply doesn't work. This gives us an opportunity, as is meant, to make the point to the developer that they need. The expectation is that they do the remediation properly. The rehabilitation has to be done properly. The only reason I am supporting this is because it's noted once again in our consultation and engagement by the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions, that all of the clearing for this particular part of the extraction has already been undertaken, and no additional clearing is required in order to extract the remaining sand. So we do need to make it very clear to the applicant that there is a very strong community expectation that their rehabilitation is done well, that they should submit that plan, that there should be a comprehensive list of species that they're going to include, and I believe that in the future we should start looking at increasing the size of the rehabilitation bonds that we keep, and not release those funds for a period of 5 to 10 years after the extraction period has been completed, and have that release of the bonds of a sufficient size that it gives the developers real incentive to do the job properly. So I will, with all that caveat, I will support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other speakers for the item? Councillor Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. President. I too am only supporting this motion because, number one, there's not another single tree, or I should just say plant life, that's going to be removed from this site, and likewise it gives us more control over the rehabilitation of the site, because given, as Councillor Noonan has just said, given the applicant's past rehabilitation attempts, I will be keeping a close eye on the rehabilitation of this site after this additional 12-month extension, and I too expect it to be done properly and the way that we are expecting it to be done.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other speakers to the item? Councillor McCleary, do you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the speakers. Yes, it's very clear that we're sending out a different message than in the past, that we expect some rehabilitation to go, and it is as a result of the community input that we've been receiving on most of these extractive industry sites. So this one will be a test. We'll see how the outcome goes, and I tend to agree that we probably need a time frame before we reimburse, and I think that's kind of included in the process of the agreement. So yeah, let's put it to the vote. I endorse the motion.
All right, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And those against? And that is carried 6-1. Okay, item 14.5, the installation of pathway and park lighting at Ferndale Park. Is there a mover to the item? Councillor Mogg. Is there a seconder? Councillor McCleary. Councillor Mogg, you have the call.
Thank you, Mr. President. I support the officer's recommendation. I'm pleased to see this motion come to council, and this motion enables then, if passed, to go to our budget. As addressed by the emails from a couple of residents, I think there's very plausible reasons why this project should go ahead. Safety concerns, lighting, usage all times of the day, etc. That was listed. So I ask for council support on this motion. Thank you.
Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, look, there's a lot of interest in this, and I made the effort, not much of an effort, but on the way home last night, and checked the lighting around there, and it is quite a dark area, especially on an overcast night. And I'm in favour of the allocation. I'm also in favour of looking at savings as we go forward in whatever the allocation, well, with the allocation that we're looking forward. So I think there's room to move in that to bring it a bit in a better cost. So yes, this is a good outcome, and as pointed out by others, that's all the committee members that have raised this with us, and the petition or the allocation to it. There's quite a bit of interest in having this achieved, and it'll be a good outcome for community.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any speakers for or against the item? Councillor Mogg? All right. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. We now move into Section 15, Community and Corporate Reports. Item 15.1, the Rates Exemption Application for the WA Council of Addictions, Inc., trading as, I'm going to pronounce it wrong again, Syrian House. Did I get it? Is it? Oh, I'm shocking. I'm sorry. Okay. In addition to that, there in the officer's recommendation is a choice of approving or refusing the application. So whoever wishes to move the item needs to state if they'll be approving or refusing. Councillor Noonan, I do believe you had your hand up first.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to move the officer's recommendation with item number 2, reading that council approve the rates exemption application from the WA Council of Addictions trading as Serenian House.
Pardon me. Is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor Clues? Councillor Noonan?
Thank you, Mr. President. Serenian House provides a very, very important, much needed service to people who have suffered addictions. It's very important that that their rehabilitation and reintegration back into society is carefully managed, and that they are given the support that they need. We have people in the Shire who unfortunately do suffer from addictions, so this is a great additional facility for the Shire to be able to have. Everywhere else in the state, as mentioned in the background briefing, everywhere else in the state where Serenian House or the WA Council of Addictions own properties and operate their facilities in other shires, they're all treated as being exempt from rates, and I think that it would be logical for us to follow suit. So I commend the officer's recommendation to approve of the rates exemption. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Clues?
Thank you, President. Yeah, I agree entirely with Councillor Noonan. I think we're lucky to have something like this facility in our Shire. There's no grey area or questions for me at all about whether or not this fits into the rate exemption, rate waiver policy. It's very, very clear that it does, in my mind. I'm just a little disappointed, I guess, that we didn't get to meet the operators. It would have been nice to hear more about what they do and thank them for their work. But happy to be pro motion.
Are there any speakers against the item? Any speakers for? Any comment? Councillor McCleary?
I'm only just going to concur with the mover and the seconder of this motion. It's one of these things that sadly we need in society, and to give them a bit of a helping hand, it's a good idea to provide this support in this little way for the next couple of years.
Are there any other members wishing to speak to the item? No. Councillor Noonan, do you wish to close? Then I'll
Thank you,
put
Mr.
that.
President.
Sorry? Yep, right. Then I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. Okay, item 15.2, the application for a rates waiver for the financial year of 2021-22, the Capel Golf Club. Again, this item has a point 2 and 3, which need the mover to state whether they are moving an approval or a refusal. Is there someone wishing to move a motion? Councillor McCleary? And is there a seconder? Councillor Andrew? Councillor McCleary?
Thank you, Mr. President. Having read all the documentation and the information and reasonings in there, I think this is a reasonable approach to refuse this rate increase, rates waiver, and I put the motion to the floor.
Councillor Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. President. In the background, there is a list of other sporting associations and clubs within the Shire. To my mind, our clubs and facilities fall into three different categories. One, that they have a sporting component, but also, shall we say, a greater benefit. They also provide a greater benefit to the community. So surf clubs, Girl Guides, things that organisations that produce lifesavers, first aiders, people that provide a broader benefit to the community than just fitness or health for the individual. We then have those sporting clubs that do provide the health and benefits to individuals, but then we also have a number of clubs and sporting facilities that have what I would consider to be commercial facilities, commercial kitchens, bar facilities, that enables them to raise their own revenue and run somewhat more as a profit-making business. To me, there's no reason why the clubs that have those commercial facilities, particularly when they are land freehold, they own land freehold, that they shouldn't be paying rates and contributing to the upkeep of our Shire services and facilities that they are users of. I completely agree that we should be refusing this rates waiver, and to my mind the Capel Golf Club should absolutely be paying rates on the parcels of land that they own in freehold.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a speaker against the motion? Speaker for? Are there any speakers? Councillor Clues?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Councillors McCleary and Andrew. I do think it's probably just worth adding that a couple of things. One is over the last few years, the golf club has had one full waiver of rates, 2 years of concession to minimum rates, in addition to $20,000 only last year under our COVID policy. So we've not been shy to help the golf club recently and substantially. So at some point they really probably should be sort of covering their own costs. I'm not sure. I think it was reported at one of those points that they were struggling financially. So I'm happy to see that hasn't been reported now, that anywhere I've seen. But also we have a big list of policies that we're due to be reviewing, and somewhere near the top of that list is our leasing policy. And I look forward to getting that done, and perhaps under the new leasing policy it may look a bit more clear cut as to whether or not the golf club fits into this this area of rates waiver. But to me, from the report and from the information provided by the member from the golf club, it is a bit too grey, and they seem to be looking for excuses to fit rather than clear-cut direction as to how they fit any guidelines. So yeah, I think for now it's best to refuse this in the current situation and then perhaps revisit it in the future.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other speakers on the item? Councillor Noonan?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I'd like to make the point. My father-in-law was a very keen golfer. He was the captain of the Singapore Island Country Club. Whenever he came to play Capel, he was amazed by the beauty of the course. He always felt like the Sultan of Johor playing it, you know, because there was so few other people. And I can understand, I certainly appreciate that members of the club value that, that they love the facility that they have. I would just like to make the point, I suppose, that I would like to encourage them to be more ambitious in their vision for the club, rather than sort of looking at small targets like rates waivers. They've got a tremendous facility with tremendous potential, and I would be much more interested to see how we could support with perhaps a capital development plan, which may well include accommodation, executive conference facilities, weddings, and certainly a focus on national and international tourism, because I know that that it would succeed. It would boost the Shire's employment opportunities and economic prosperity. So I would encourage the club to be more ambitious. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are there any other speakers to the item? Councillor McCleary, do you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. President. Clara, Councillor Clara put it in a nutshell. There's the comparison to other groups is totally irrelevant in this situation. We're focusing on a rate waiver or not a rate waiver on this particular item, and I think the discussion here has been correct in its discussions to refuse, and it look, there's just too many things that came in the main paper that seem to be totally irrelevant and not reasonable comparisons. But however, it has highlighted the council, as Councillor Clues pointed out, to review some of the policies that we're doing in this area, and I'm sure that's where we're heading in the not too distant future. So I put the motion of refuse as was started and moved.
All right, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. Item 15.3, the accounts paid during the month of March 2020. They are there as you see them. Is there a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Andrew. Is there a seconder? Councillor McCleary. Councillor Andrew. You're right, Councillor McCleary. Yep. Is there any discussion or questions? Councillor Andrew, nothing to close? Nope. I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Item 15.4, the financial statements for the 31st of March 2020. Is there a mover for that recommendation? Councillor McCleary. Seconded Councillor Mogg. Councillor McCleary. Councillor Mogg. Is there any discussion around the table? Councillor McCleary, nothing to sum up? All right, I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. There is no new business of an urgent nature. Public question time. Do we have any questions from the gallery? No one? All right. There are no motions without notice, or is there no motions without notice? Notice of motions for consideration at the next ordinary meeting of the council. Nothing. There are no items for consideration behind closed doors. And with that, I will declare the meeting closed at 6:35 and making a new record. Just, yeah. Just while I've still got the public online as well, I might just encourage them that tonight the Festival of Small Halls is located in Jalorup at the hall. There's a bit of live music on, limited tickets, so make sure you get there quick. Thank you very much.